Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to getting up to speed. Today, well, we're tackling a career that really acts like a mirror, doesn't it? Reflecting the last, 30 years of American media shifts.
Exactly. We're digging into the, let's say, unfiltered evolution of Nicholas Rocco Di Paolo.
Yeah, Nick Di Paolo.
And when you trace his path, you're not just looking at a comedian born in, Beverly, Massachusetts back in '62.
Right.
You're actually tracking this really controversial, often confrontational voice as it moves. From like the traditional local stand-up clubs to writing for Emmy-nominated TV shows, then becoming a fixture in that whole shock radio era.
It's a huge part of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
and finally landing where he is now,
Yes.
hosting his own very independent, very political digital show. It's quite the journey.
That's exactly our mission today, then, to trace that whole arc, which is, frankly, pretty complex. It's a real study in, adapting on one hand, but also refusing to compromise on the other. We're looking at the whole timeline. From those first open mics in Boston, the late 80s, all the way to his current setup. I mean, the guy's been everything. Stand-up, writer, actor, radio guy, podcast host.
A true multi-hyphenate, as they say. And his specific style, which, we'll break down later, that mix of observational stuff, black comedy, insult humor, it was so consistent.
Right.
And that consistency actually let him succeed in all these different, sometimes conflicting media worlds. But it also set him up for some major clashes, with the powers that be, the gatekeepers.
Yeah, you can see that coming.
I mean, he was key to Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn, always popping up on the Comedy Central roasts, a regular voice on massive shows like Opie and Anthony, Howard Stern. His career pattern seems to be get in, do incredibly well, push the boundaries, and then often get pushed out, only to immediately rebuild somewhere else.
Okay, let's unpack all of that. We really need to start at the beginning, right? The foundations. There's this surprising academic background.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And apparently it was sheer desperation, not ambition, that got him on stage in the first place.
Yeah, it's funny. His early life gives you almost no clue about the kind of, political and controversial figure he'd become. It's pretty standard New England stuff.
Right.
Born in Beverly, grew up in Danvers, Mass. Followed a pretty traditional path, actually. Academics, sports. He went to the University of Maine, graduated '84. Major. Marketing.
Marketing. That's almost the opposite of his later persona, isn't it? Marketing's usually about, politeness, persuasion.
Exactly. Not roasting celebrities till they cry. It's a fascinating contrast. And yeah, he was apparently quite the athlete, too, a running back for the university football team.
Oh, wow.
And he was in a fraternity, Sigma Nu. So you see maybe a bit of that competitive team player background, maybe even, disciplined in a certain way.
That competitive drive. Yeah, that makes sense when you look at the sheer volume of work he put in later in comedy.
Totally. And competition was kind of in the family, it seems. His brother was also at Maine, doing play-by-play for the Black Bears hockey team, worked alongside Gary Thorne, the big-time announcer.
No kidding, Gary Thorne.
Yeah. So, the world around him valued performance, quick commentary, even if it was focused on sports initially.
But, okay, so he graduates with this marketing degree that doesn't jump into comedy.
No, not right away. The sources say he tried the expected path first, office job in marketing.
Okay.
But the job that really seems to define that period, or rather the failure that defined his later success, was selling meat and seafood, door to door.
Ooh, door-to-door meat sales. That sounds character building, let's say.
Character building or soul crushing, maybe both. But that seems to be the key, the motivator. He said he was always a fan of comedy, watched Carson, Letterman, Leno, Robert Klein, all the greats. But he just didn't have, in his own words, the guts to try it himself. It took hating that sales job so much, that grind, that finally pushed him. He literally said, desperation led me to the stage, not ambition.
Wow. I think a lot of people, especially creatives, can probably relate to that. The pain of the safe job finally getting worse than the fear of trying the thing you actually love.
It's that existential push, right? Makes you take the risk.
So what was that first actual step onto the stage like?
Oh, the origin story is perfect. Summer of '86, open mic night, Stitches Club in Boston.
Okay.
But he didn't just, calmly prepare. He apparently came straight from a family barbecue.
Oh.
Having had, and I quote, about 22 beers in me.
Okay, that's not just loosening up, that's anesthesia.
Yeah, it tells you something about the anxiety level maybe. But he did his 5 minutes, said it went pretty well. And crucially, he knew right then, instantly, this is what he had to do.
He found the thing.
He found the thing. But life intervened slightly. That sales job moved him temporarily to Rhode Island.
Ah, okay,
All
so a
right.
slight detour.
It's just a brief one. It wasn't until spring of '87 that he got back to Boston properly and started hitting those open mic nights regularly. So '87, that's really the starting pistol for the career we're talking about today.
Trading scallops for hecklers.
Pretty much, yeah. A definite upgrade, I imagine.
So 1987, he commits. And from what the sources say, he just went all in, right? Hit the ground running.
Absolutely relentless. He worked that whole New England circuit, you know, the Comedy Vault, the Comedy Correction, places like that, pretty much nonstop until about '92. This was his boot camp.
Forging the act in the fires of Tuesday night crowds in Providence.
Exactly. Pressure testing the material constantly.
So what was his style like back then? Was he already doing the political stuff, the really aggressive bits?
Not quite yet, it seems. The descriptions from that time focus more on the technical side, like a rapid-fire approach. He aimed for 4 or 5 punches attached to every joke.
Dense, like a machine gun setup punchline delivery.
Yeah, aggressive in pace, trying to just overwhelm you with jokes. It sounds like he was really focused on the craft, the mechanics of stand-up. His early manager, Barry Katz, mentioned he did over 300 nights in his first year.
300 nights, that's insane. That kind of dedication, you just don't see that as often anymore.
It's serious work ethic. And that kind of grind, well, it naturally leads you to the next level, which for comedians then was New York City.
Right. The big move. And this is where a pretty major connection happens, isn't it? His roommate in New York.
Yeah, none other than Louis C.K.
Wow. Okay. So they were sharing an apartment back then. But the move wasn't just about networking, right? It actually shifted his comedy itself.
It seemed so.
Yeah.
NYC was the catalyst for him getting more political. And how he did it is really interesting, especially thinking about his later stuff. He said he started reading all the local papers, the Post, the Times, Daily News.
Uh-huh. The whole spectrum.
Right. The liberal ones, the conservative ones.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd compare how they covered the same story. He was mining the differences, the contradictions.
Ah, okay. So he's actively looking for the tension in how things are reported. That makes perfect sense. It explains why his later commentary often feels like it's hitting from multiple angles. It's comedy born from comparing the narratives.
Exactly. That method, that discipline of looking at conflicting media views, you could see the seeds of his news satire approach right there.
Mm-hmm.
Decades before his own show. But, comedy dreams often lead west.
To L.A.
Yep. In '92, he relocates again. Los Angeles this time.
Yeah.
The goal was TV and film roles.
And did that L.A. move pay off?
Pretty quickly, yeah. He got some really crucial early national exposure out there. A spot on the Arsenio Hall show, which was massive at the time.
Cheers.
And he did one of HBO's Young Comedians specials. That was a really important launchpad for comics back then. Put you on the industry radar.
So L.A. gives him visibility, but then he gets pulled back east.
He does. The call came from Chris Rock.
The Chris Rock.
The Chris Rock, offering him a writing job on the Chris Rock Show, which filmed in New York. So Di Paolo takes it, moves back, settles in Queens around 2001.
Now, this writing gig, this is important, isn't it? Because it kind of pushes back against the idea that he was only ever about shock value or just insult comedy.
Absolutely. Critical context. This was high-level, prestigious writing. The show was huge, critically acclaimed. He wrote for 2 seasons. And in 2001, he and the whole writing team got nominated for an Emmy.
Wow.
Outstanding writing for a variety, music, or comedy program. And get this, it was actually his 2nd Emmy nomination overall.
Second. Okay, see, that's the kind of detail people might miss. He wasn't just a club comic who stumbled into radio. He had serious writing credentials recognized at the highest level.
Totally. It proves the skill set went way beyond the stage persona. Being able to craft sophisticated comedy for TV, getting multiple Emmy nods, that underpins everything else. It's that combination, the sharp writing mind and the increasingly confrontational delivery, that really fueled the next big phase.
Which was?
Radio on the roasts. This where that unfiltered style found its kind of perfect home for a while. We're talking major guest spots. Howard Stern, Opie, and Anthony.
Okay, let's talk about shock radio for a second, because that term gets thrown around. For listeners, you have to understand, these shows in the late 90s, early 2000s, they were a different beast.
Totally different. They operated largely outside the FCC rules that governed regular radio and TV. They were built on being edgy, pushing boundaries, being confrontational.
So for a comedian like Di Paolo, whose whole thing was becoming about saying the unsayable insult humor, dark jokes, these shows weren't just tolerating him.
They were inviting it.
Yeah.
They needed that kind of content. It was the perfect ecosystem for his style at that time.
And that radio heat, it bled back into TV, specifically with Tough Crowd.
Yeah, Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn ran 2002 to 2004 on Comedy Central. Such a foundational show for that era. It was basically just comedians arguing about the news, unscripted, political, often really heated.
The perfect training ground for his later podcast, you could argue. That rapid-fire debate style.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the ultimate showcase for that aggressive style, the Comedy Central roasts.
Ah, yes, the roasts. He became a staple there.
Oh, yeah. Hugh Hefner, Pam Anderson, Dennis Leary, Jeff Foxworthy, Larry the Cable Guy. He was on a bunch of them.
And the roast stage is basically a laboratory for insult comedy, isn't it? Mixed with maybe some of that black comedy stuff.
Exactly. You could take that aggression, that precise joke-writing skill he'd honed since Boston, and just unleash it in this high-profile televised format. This period really cemented his public image as the guy who'd say anything, the unfiltered one.
Okay, so before we get into how things started to shift with mainstream media, we should probably nail down the specific kind of comedy he was doing and talk about the key people he worked with.
Right. The sources list out his genres pretty clearly. Observational humor, black comedy, insult comedy, news satire, and off-color humor. So quite a mix.
Let's unpack maybe two of those. Insult comedy is pretty obvious from the roasts, right?
Yeah, that's straightforward. But black comedy is really important for understanding him. In his case, it means finding humor in really dark, controversial, or taboo subjects. Things like, race relations, death, social issues people usually whisper about.
And he uses observational humor to pick those apart.
Seems like it. Pointing out hypocrisy or absurdity within those dark areas, which is probably why PC culture became such a frequent target for him. He's looking for the uncomfortable truths, often through a deliberately offensive lens.
And this style, it wasn't developed in a vacuum. He had some really long-standing collaborations. The Louis C.K. one is maybe the biggest. Started as roommates.
He just kept going. It wasn't just a brief thing. This was a creative partnership that lasted, 2 decades? Across different projects.
Like what?
Well, Di Paolo played the super on CK's HBO show Lucky Louie. He was in like a dozen episodes of Louie on FX, often playing a version of himself or characters close to his persona.
Right, I remember him on Louie.
And even as recently as 2022, he was in CK's film 4th of July, playing that really obnoxious Uncle Kevin character, stole scenes in that.
So that long collaboration, it suggests a real mutual respect or understanding of each other's comedic voice. Even if CK's path took its own controversial turns later, they both seemed drawn to uncomfortable realism.
Definitely seems that way. Another big partnership, maybe a bit more wild, was with Artie Lange.
Ah, Artie Lange, yeah.
Met him at a pilot audition, apparently. They became good friends and toured together a lot.
They even went overseas for the troops, right?
They did. The Operation Mirth USO tour in 2008 went to Afghanistan. Lange headlined. Di Paolo was with him. And, performing that kind of edgy material in a war zone, it said something about their shared no boundaries approach.
That partnership even became a formal show for a while.
Yeah, the Nick and Artie Show. Launched in 2011. It was a syndicated sports talk radio show, but with their comedic spin.
How long did that last with Nick?
He left in January 2013, so about a year and a half. But it was a significant move into being a dedicated host, not just a guest. Showed he could carry a show, bring that opinionated, funny take to sports talk.
And we can't really talk about his development without mentioning Colin Quinn again.
Absolutely not. Quinn was huge. Tough Crowd was obviously the big platform Quinn gave him, which honed that political debate skill. But Quinn also apparently titled Di Paolo's first 2 stand-up albums.
Oh, really? Which ones?
Born This Way from '99 and Road Rage from 2004.
Huh. Interesting. So there was this whole interconnected group feeding off each other, shaping each other's brands.
Yeah, it was definitely a scene. They kind of created an environment where that aggressive truth-telling style was the currency. And speaking of odd pairings and creative ideas, we have to touch on that animated show, Shorties Watching Shorties.
Oh my God, Shorties. That show was peak early 2000s Comedy Central weirdness.
Totally. It was animated. Di Paolo and Patrice O'Neill, another legend gone too soon, voiced these 2 babies.
Yeah, unsupervised babies just sitting in diapers, watching clips of other comedians and commenting on them in these really foul-mouthed, cynical ways.
It sounds bizarre, but what's fascinating is why they did it. The network apparently wanted to capture the chemistry between Di Paolo and O'Neill, which was known to be volatile but hilarious from radio.
Right. They couldn't just put them on another panel show, maybe.
Maybe not. Tough Crowd was already doing that.
Yeah.
Apparently, Di Paolo himself came up with the idea for the babies. which is kind of brilliant, right? Using these innocent-looking characters to say the absolute most offensive, cutting stuff.
Meta commentary, almost.
Totally. It really
Yeah.
shows his knack for blending that intense commentary with these weirdly creative formats.
Okay, so summing up this phase. He is a proven Emmy-nominated writer, a successful niche actor, a master of insult and black comedy, honed in the Wild West of shock radio and shows like Tough Crowd. But the media landscape was starting to change.
Yeah, and that's where the friction really starts to build. His style versus the changing times.
So the early 2000s, he's pretty established within the system, right? He's got the writing cred, the radio presence, he can draw crowds.
Definitely an insider. He even got his own solo radio hosting gig for a bit, late 2006 on WFNY in New York City, an afternoon show.
How long did that last?
Only till about December 2007. The station flipped formats, which happens. After that, though, he became a go-to fill-in host for some big names. Jerry Doyle, Dennis Miller, Dan Patrick.
So he was trusted talent, someone the networks could rely on to deliver that edgy but still, manageable content within their framework.
Exactly, who's working within the system. But you could feel the cultural ground shifting underneath, couldn't you? That kind of confrontational humor was starting to run up against, well, evolving corporate ideas about sensitivity.
Yeah, the landscape was changing.
Yeah.
And that tension eventually boiled over around 2017, 2018.
It did. He got another big shot. His own dedicated evening show on SiriusXM on the Faction Talk channel. Started May 2017.
Okay, SiriusXM satellite radio, that was supposed to be the safe zone, right? The place edgy comedy could still thrive away from FCC regs. The successor to old school shock radio in a way.
That was the perception, yeah. But even satellite radio by the late 2010s had its limits. Or maybe the public nature of social media changed the game for everyone, regardless of platform.
Ah. So what was the specific incident? What finally broke the connection with the big institutions?
It was a tweet. A direct collision between his unfiltered style, the immediacy of Twitter, and corporate HR policies, basically.
What's a tweet say?
According to the sources, he posted something like, "School shooters, please confine yourself to campuses, specifically faculty lounges at Berkeley, Fresno State, etc."
Oof. Okay, yeah, that's textbook Di Paolo black comedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hyper-political, off-color, hitting a raw nerve, extremely dark satire.
Exactly. The kind of thing he might have said on Opie and Anthony 10 years earlier. Maybe with some controversy, but likely survivable within that bubble.
Yeah.
But posted on his own Twitter account. While employed by a major corporation like SiriusXM in 2018, the context was entirely different.
The reaction was swift.
Immediate. SiriusXM fired him. Termination.
And his response, did he apologize, walk it back?
Not really apologize for the joke itself. His public stance was that SiriusXM completely overreacted. He called the tweet poorly worded, but argued it was only worth a suspension at best.
So he wasn't backing down on the intent of the humor, the satire. He was arguing about the punishment.
Precisely. He was basically defending his right to make that kind of joke, framing the firing as corporate overreach, an attack on comedic freedom. It perfectly encapsulates his whole philosophy about speech and offense.
It makes you wonder, though, with his track record, the Emmy nods, the connections, why not just soften the edges a bit, play the game to stay within those big platforms instead of essentially burning that bridge with SiriusXM?
I think for him, compromising the material, softening the edges would have been like abandoning the entire point. His whole brand, his whole philosophy was built on not doing that, on pushing back against exactly those kinds of pressures. So the firing, in a weird way, might have been inevitable. It forced the next step.
Which was?
The independent leap. He had to build his own platform where he couldn't be fired for being himself.
Then he moved fast on that, didn't he?
Incredibly fast.
Yeah.
The SiriusXM firing was April 2018. By July 9th, 2018, just a few months later, the Nick Di Paolo Show launched. Audio and video podcast.
Wow, that's the modern playbook, isn't it? Get deplatformed by the old guard, immediately pivot to your own audience directly online.
Textbook example. Don't wait, don't complain too long, just build your own thing.
Let's look at how he built it, because the structure seems pretty smart for this kind of unfiltered content.
It's basically talk radio, but redesigned for the internet age. An hour long, 4 days a week. He broadcasts live from his own studio setup.
And how does he manage reach versus revenue?
Smartly. The live show streams free on YouTube. That gets him maximum eyeballs, keeps him visible. But the real money, the dedicated fan base, that comes through Patreon. Premium content, archives, extras.
And the Patreon name itself is a statement?
Oh yeah, creating an unsafe space for all.
Chuckles. Okay. That's pretty direct.
It's defiant branding, isn't it?
Yeah.
A direct flip of the safe space idea. It clearly signals exactly what you're getting, the opposite of PC culture. That's his core audience. And his topics reflect that. News, politics, modern society, race, social justice, all through his specific lens.
And this setup allows him to talk to whoever he wants, right? A guest who might also be a bit too controversial for mainstream platforms.
Exactly. He's had people like Kurt Metzger, A.J. Rice, Colin Quinn comes back, Anthony Cumia. He's created his own ecosystem.
But here's where it gets interesting, right? He achieves this total independence, but he doesn't stay completely isolated in his own digital world.
No, he doesn't. And this is a really key development. Since 2021, our sources say he's been a contributing writer for Greg Gutfeld's show on Fox News Channel.
Gutfeld, the late night show, writing for them.
Yeah, providing material, helping write, opening monologues sometimes. It's a subtle but significant shift. He went from being fired by a generally neutral corporation like SiriusXM to contributing content within a specifically political, conservative media structure like Fox News. It's just that even for an independent, some kind of alignment might be necessary or desirable for visibility or stability.
He's aligning his writing talent, which we know is top-notch, with a very specific political brand.
And that alignment trend continued. In March 2023, he officially joined Mug Club.
Steven Crowder's network.
Right. Which puts him alongside other very polarizing, mostly conservative figures like Alex Jones, Brian Callen. It's another move away from pure independence towards joining a larger, politically defined digital platform.
So the journey seems to be traditional media code, it gets pushed out, it creates independent platform, aligns independent platform with larger, politically specific networks.
That seems to be the trajectory. The traditional gatekeepers are gone, but maybe new politically aligned gatekeepers offer a different kind of structure and reach. It's less about content neutrality and more about finding your specific audience block.
Throughout all these shifts, radio, firing, independence, alignment, he kept putting out stand-up specials, right? Those seem like key markers of his evolution.
Absolutely. They're like snapshots of his material and worldview at different points.
We mentioned the early ones, Born This Way, 99, Road Rage, 04. What came after?
Funny how. In 2008, then Raw Nerve in 2011. That one was interesting because it was released both as a Comedy Central Presents half hour and as a full special on Showtime. Still working within the traditional system then.
But then things started to change, even in how he released them.
Yeah, by 2014, with Another Senseless Killing, you see him choosing a very specific vibe. He filmed it at Acme, a small club in Minneapolis. Really intimate setting.
Going for that raw, immediate feel, like being back on the circuit.
Seems like it. Less polish, more intensity. Then came Inflammatory in 2017, just before the SiriusXM stuff hit the fan.
But the really strategic one, the one that reflects the big pivot, seems to be A Breath of Fresh Air in 2019. Released right after the firing, and he put it out.
How?
For free. Directly onto YouTube.
Okay, that's a major statement. Why free?
His stated reason was explicit. He wanted to release it without any media industry filter. No network notes from Netflix or Comedy Central. No executive demanding cuts to avoid controversy.
So it was partly artistic control, but also a business move, bypassing the gatekeepers entirely.
Exactly. Get it directly to the audience. Maximize reach. Find everyone who might be looking for exactly that kind of unfiltered comedy, but maybe wouldn't pay for a subscription or buy a special site unseen. It was a direct pipeline using YouTube as the distribution network. Very smart. Very much of the moment.
And his personal life also kind of mirrors this political trajectory, doesn't it? His physical location.
Yeah, that's another layer. He married his wife, Andrea, back in March 2003. They'd been together since '94, so a long-term relationship.
Right.
And they lived around the New York area for years. Queens, then Tarrytown, then Newcastle by 2004. Standard suburban New York life for a successful comic.
But then came the big move.
The big move. April 2019. Right after he'd launched his independent show and really leaned into the anti-establishment vibe, he and Andrea moved to Georgia.
And he didn't just move quietly. He made a point of why he was moving.
Oh, yeah. He made a very public, very provocative statement, calling New York a liberal shirthole.
Wow. Okay, so he's literally using his geographic move as content, as part of his brand narrative.
Totally. It fused everything together. His personal life choice, his political stance, his comedy content. It became this symbol of him escaping the perceived liberal oppression of New York for the freedom of the South. Powerful storytelling for his base.
And all of this whole journey, it really comes back to a core belief he seems to have held for a long, long time about offense, about words.
Absolutely. It's remarkably consistent. There was a New York Times article way back in 2007. This is pre-Twitter firing, pre-Trump even, that talked about him and the shock radio brethren after the Don Imus controversy.
And what did it say about Di Paolo specifically?
It highlighted his stance against PC culture, even back then. It quoted a bit he did mocking some kind of employee sensitivity training manual. The manual was apparently titled, Words, Hurt, and Harm.
Okay.
And Di Paolo's punchline, his core argument was, right away, we're starting with a false premise because words don't hurt.
Words don't hurt. That's basically the key to understanding his entire approach, isn't it?
It really is. It's the engine behind the insult comedy, the black comedy, the political jabs. It's his justification for saying anything, for pushing boundaries in every single environment he's been in, regardless of the fallout. His whole move towards independence, you could argue, was about finding or creating a space where that single premise, words don't hurt, could exist without institutional punishment.
Okay, so looking back at this whole trajectory, Nick Di Paolo's career, it really is like a microcosm, isn't it? A case study of a performer whose style, that consistent confrontational style, it brought him success, but eventually just became incompatible with where mainstream media was heading on sensitivity.
Yeah, he didn't really change his core product. The market around him changed, so he didn't bend his brand to fit the market. He found a new market, or rather, built his own venue for it.
And he showed it's possible, right, to go from the traditional heights, Emmy nominations, big radio shows, to being essentially kicked out and then successfully launching your own independent thing, your own profitable media company, basically, on YouTube and Patreon.
Definitely. And for you, the listener, that's maybe the big practical takeaway here. His path shows that modern reality for creators, especially those with strong, maybe controversial viewpoints, if you prioritize unfiltered content over playing it safe within the old institutions.
The tools are there now.
The tools are there. The tech allows the audience to find you, to follow the content directly, even if the big networks or platforms try to sideline you.
That's the optimistic view, the independent success story.
It is. But, and here's where it gets really, really interesting, and this is the final thought we want to leave you with today.
Okay.
We saw him make that move, break free from the networks, build this successful independent show, run it for, what, 5+ years now? Total control.
Right. The unsafe space for all.
Exactly. But then, recently, he takes these steps back towards larger structures. He joins Steven Crowder's Mug Love Network. He starts writing for Gutfeld on Fox News.
Aligning himself with big, established, politically specific brands. Not neutral platforms, but ideologically aligned ones.
Precisely. So what does that tell us, ultimately, about how viable truly independent media or comedy is in the long run? Is that total autonomy, that lone wolf status, actually sustainable for years and years?
Or do you eventually need to hook your wagon to some kind of larger structure, even if it's a politically specific one, to maintain reach, stability, maybe relevance?
Does that political alignment eventually have to replace the old institutional support in today's media world? Can you be truly independent and still thrive long-term? Or does the need for audience and structure inevitably pull you into one camp or another?
Does the desire for reach eventually compromise the purity of that independence? That is definitely something to chew on.
Yeah, a question about the future of media, really.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, that wraps up our deep dive into the unfiltered evolution of Nick Di Paolo. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.